Present, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Piyusha? Yes, ma'am. Ripon? Vicky? Shantanu? Sudipta? Pratichi? Shobhata? Present, ma'am. Shumangul?
Present, ma'am.
Oyun?
Present, ma'am.
Ongita Moni? Pallavi? Mukul? Shubir? Shuji? Yasha? Present, ma'am. Chongol?
Present, ma'am.
Shreya?
Yes, ma'am.
Habiba? Present. Babu?
Yes, ma'am.
Paruti?
Yes, ma'am.
Prarthana?
Yes, ma'am.
Suparna?
Yes, ma'am.
Ramkrishna?
Yes, ma'am.
Modumala? Ankura?
Present, ma'am.
Dipasha? Devashish? Nandita?
Yes, ma'am.
Parvati? Shonji? Sarif?
Yes, ma'am.
Shavati?
Present, ma'am.
Shopani?
Present, ma'am.
Suparna?
Present, ma'am.
History?
Have already said.
SK Ohidul? Okay, so last class I had started and I'm going to finish. Maybe I won't be able to finish in this class. That is cultural heritage and human rights. And those of you who are present, I hope you can recollect. We were talking about. I explained what dark heritage is, what we mean by as an eight so what it means by dark heritage, and so we were talking about the archaeology repression, um, of repressive measures which were enforced by the various totalitarian regimes. And the basic idea was that how the methodology of archaeology can be used to uh, uncover the horrors of the communist, of the totalitarian repression, and we were looking at Poland and the tangible material remains of the Stalinist era. এবং ডিটেলে একটু বলছিলাম because these are important. Poland for the last, particularly from the more so over the last 2 decades, archaeologists have been involved not only as part of the state initiative but also as part of various some private organizations. To archaeologists have been involved in forensic studies and DNA studies. কেন সেটাও আমি এক্সপ্লেন করেছিলাম that there were these mass graves, and the most important part was to understand, okay, under what conditions these people were buried, and there was a social implication that the families of the deceased, the descendants, they wanted, they did not have any memory of the dark past. So they wanted it was their greed to get reconnected with their ancestors. So DNA studies would usually help them that to match the DNA remains. Another thing is to sort of uncover the many of these things which were lying in shroud of the Stalinist regime, because they always presented like utopia, that everything will be all right, everything will be well, and inspiring the citizens for a utopian kind of world. But in actuality, the horrors of repression, they were very much in the shroud, were covered by the shroud. So this, after the thing of the Berlin Wall, after the fall of the Berlin Wall, and when things became much more open, so these attempts were made by these initiatives were launched by the present state government, the present governments, as well as other private associations. So archaeologists have been involved more in this kind of study, and where mass graves were often, what happened was the bodies were taken out of the mass grave and they were given proper burial. Then mass grave and creation, they were kind of buried in a military cemetery. Okay? Then sometimes, I'll talking about this, that they're absolute horrible or that how people were buried, and this was, and sometimes there was a mismatch. Mostly there were no records, and when there were records, sometimes they were mismatched. So there were a lot of these missing elements. Okay? Another thing which is there were settlements, particularly see the German civilians were targeted in the studies too. So there were places, and it is instead of a landscape, the term that has been used is terrorscape. So there were places where the entire village, which was possibly populated by the borders of Germany, it was populated, it had been populated by the German civilians. They had all fled. Okay, so the terrorscape of these abandoned settlements, and then they were re-inhabited, etc. So we will look into this in more detail. So what I'm doing is there are a lot of details here, so I am glossing over the details, which I want to share. But is important to sometimes I'm using the details just to highlight the absolutely the intensity, the absolute extremities of the repressive feelings. So, okay, so one of the most famous or infamous massacres, and where we are finding these mass graves, was the Katyn massacre. Katyn or Katyn, Katyn, Katyn massacre, which was referred to a series of mass executions of over 24,000 Polish citizens. Over 24,000 Polish citizens, mainly who were mainly officers of the Polish army, and this was carried out in the spring of 1940 by the Soviet army.
These were innocent civilians.
So one such graveyard was uncovered by the Germans in 1943, and the investigation revealed bodies of around 4,400 Polish officers. Now, the 1943 exhumation মানে বডিগুলোকে বার করে আনা প্লেস থেকে uncovered the remains at Katyn, uncovered the remains of some people, some persons who were archaeologists and officers in the Polish army. The memory of their persecution, the memory of their execution remained alive in the post-war circles of the Polish archaeologists. Okay? So, following this, an institute called the Katyn Institute, Katyn, Katyn Institute, was founded in the late 1970s. Incidentally, as I was saying, not all were, and in the 70s, you understand that it was very much under Soviet Russia's communist government. So, therefore, it did not have a legal basis, this institute. But the initiative to uncover such horrors was very much, it began in the under the communist regimes. And many of these people who were involved, এটা কোন ক্লাসে আসছো? কোথায় আসছো জানো? না না, তুমি আমি তোমার নাম বুকটা পরিচিত নয়, তুমি কোন ক্লাসে ঢুকছো জানো? হ্যাঁ, লোগো। তোমার নাম কি? হ্যাঁ, বন্ধ করো আর চিপিয়ে দিয়ে দাও। পরে মনে করি ওর পার্সেন্টেজ দিতে, আমি এখন ক্লাস থামিয়ে তোমাদের পার্সেন্টেজ দিতে পারবো। So many of these people, particularly the founders of this institute, they were archaeologists. Okay? Then 1988 saw the establishment of again another association which lacked legality for the families of the Katyn victims. Okay? Which brought together the relatives of the victims. And the objectives was to find the graves of these victims and convert them into military cemeteries. So this work was underway in even under the communist regimes, and in the 1990s, the archaeological research of the graves that got that sort of got momentum, and this graves in the Katyn forest outside Tver, which was in Russia, TVER, and some places, very interestingly, in Ukraine, provided insights into the horrors and the details of the Katyn massacre. There are several details which I am just overlooking. Now, the initial search for the graves of the victims of communism was a private endeavor. There are details about all this and very interesting details which we can look up, which you will obviously get to know. Now, there were many, I'm just citing one example that the execution, one person was executed, and the news of the execution reached the family of the victim weeks later. Okay, and the family, including the victim's mother, sister, and aunt, they had to look around. They had to go to the place, look around the convicts from the prison on certain streets, trying to look for their burial. Finally, they made it to the cemetery in one particular street called the Osogovika Street. The name of the street is not important. What important is that they could finally track down the burial, where they bribed an undertaker who directed them to a nameless grave and helped them dig it up. At the bottom of the grave, the body of a man in a Polish officer's uniform was uncovered, which was resting in a simple wooden box. Okay, so there was no proper burial. How the mother recognized that this was her son from the stitches she had made while mending the uniform. Okay. And on that basis concluded that the man was her son. So there were several such examples, such instances. And then they covered the grave with a cross on the plate, carrying personal details of deceased. And a DNA study made much more than 50 years later, in 2006, confirmed that it was truly that person, the lieutenant, Jack, was buried in the grave. Now, so this will just give you an instance of the atrocities and the tremendous trauma that a family went through. Obviously, the DNA analysis that was done in 2006 could not be of the mother or the aunt or the daughter, who were probably not, definitely not alive by then, but the next generation. Okay? So, mainly archaeologists got involved in this kind of research. So, the successful identification in this cemetery paved the way. This was important, this was a turning point, paved the way to a vast archaeological research program of which involved studying of the cemetery between 2011 and 2012. The research was initiated by a historian, and he discovered, after analyzing some of the archival records, he discovered that between 1945 and 56, 848 people had died in the prisons of Wrocław and who were buried in various places in the cemetery. Wrocław বলে এই প্রিজনে 848 জন মানুষ মারা গিয়েছিল, and they were buried in various places in that particular cemetery, and where there was no sort of ceremonial burial. This included 171 people who were sentenced to death by shooting or hanging. The graves also included 42 children, newborns and babies, who died at the hospital or in the nursery at the prison. Okay. In over 90% of the cases, the bodies of these prisoners were buried in specially assigned slots. Okay. And এইখানে যেটা তোমাদের আগে বলছিলাম, geophysical survey. Geophysical survey is something which is done by archaeologists to see whether there are any obstructions below the ground. So it's the geophysical survey which revealed that these 130 burial traits under the ground. Okay? And then how the bodies were treated. So there are details about Pitame Mahavishnu. I'm not going into that, histology, water shots, etc. But it will just, I mean, you will get an idea that this forms part of the archaeological research program. Then sometimes the bodies of prisoners were buried one or two at a time without coffins. Then the records and the cemeteries books প্রত্যেকটা যাবো একটা recording থাকে cemetery following prison level. So that corresponded with the actual structure of the graves. Errors regarding places of burial were also observed, and even this all came out in the archaeological investigations. Okay? Then there were burials which were not registered in the archives. And this is particularly one example of an officer of the Ukrainian insurgent army. So, বারবার ইউক্রেনের কথাটা আসছে তাহলে বুঝতে পারছো যে insurgency or what we are seeing now has a history. And this person had committed suicide in the prison. What I'm going to relate is something absolute one of the extreme cases of atrocity, but just to give you an idea. Among the bones of this rib cage were the remains of 5 children who died in the perinatal period. The main thing of the totalitarian regime was obfuscating all evidence, and so that they can, so that it can be a blemishless quote unquote regime. So these children who died in the perinatal period, those were unregistered. So where would they dispose of the body? So those bodies were put inside the rib cage of this person who died or who committed suicide. And this was most likely done in the prison hospital. So the practice of putting rid of the body of the newborns who died in the workload prison was not uncommon. So this just should give you an idea that, as I was saying, whether it's left or right when it comes to totalitarianism, there is absolutely no difference between Stalin and Hitler. Very honest. So, there were research programs on the victims of communist terror, and there was systematic research which carried on 2011 onwards. The Polish genetic database of victims of totalitarianisms was established around this time, and the database contains information on the genetic code obtained from the exhumed remains as well as the information on the genome of the victims' relatives. Okay, so there are various stages which are described in how the genetic samples are matched. So this was an interdisciplinary research program constituted of biological anthropologists, archaeologists, historians, geneticists, and coroners who conducted the subsequent examinations. Okay. Then there are these various streets in Warsaw. আরো কয়েকটা স্ট্রিটের নাম এখানে আছে যেখানে there were these prisons, and the executed victims were just buried in one of the cemeteries, not proper burial, but one of the graves, mass graves on these streets, somewhere on these streets. Okay? Further research on the victims involved out-of-court executions, and out-of-court executions which were not carried out within the court premises, obviously which had no record. So the most prominent event of this sort is the case of a mass disappearance of about 592 Polish citizens who were detained from 12 to 28 July 1945, and there was a massive roundup at the Polish Belarusian border. Okay? And the aim was to destroy anti-communist partisans. So obviously it would probably carry out any on any suspect who was considered to be a suspect insurgent. Okay? Now, so there were these excavations which were also conducted in forests where there were where they suspected that there would be graves, and the remains of these out-of-court institution sites. It had a operation was called Lawina, which means in Polish avalanche, Lawina. Okay? That is the informal code name of a massacre of partisans from a national armed forces unit, and that was conducted by the Polish security forces. Again, the details to Roger. So the likely places of massacre were investigated and explored, and they were excavated. They were in the forests or in an abandoned German airport, barracks, and then there were these. Apart from these, so there were these, as you can see, there are different gradations of these atrocities. Okay, mass graves, out of court execution sites, mass graves in different places. Then there were what is called the war crime sites. You know, in archaeology, our methodology is that when we are studying places, we call them sites. So we make these categories. We are taught how to categorize different sites. Okay, and these sites are defined. Okay, that defined according to certain parameters. Okay, so this is very much a sites flow in archaeology. It's very much part of archaeological methodology. So the war crime sites, these were conducted. These war crimes were committed at the end of World War II and in its aftermath, and the anger was directed against the Germans, and there were these angers, and the outcome of this anger, the outcome of this rage were also seen in skirmishes between families, and particularly in one case we see that Red Army soldier had murdered members of Polish family, and he also killed a Polish force laborer who tried to defend the Germans. Okay? Now the local pastor, he had buried his victims on the site of the massacre. The memory of the location of the grave faded with time, but the story, I was talking about cultural memory, so this is the memory of conflict. Okay? So the story of the murder stayed alive among the local populations, and an excavation was initiated in 2014, just 8 years back, which I covered with you. So on the basis of the memory of where this would have happened, the archaeologists undertook this excavation. And so this is another thing, like where I think I had explained to you in the first class that when someone asked you that how do we know that where we have to excavate? Usually there are archaeological early ancient sites, medieval sites, or whatever, which are abundant. We would expect to find some tangible material remaining on the surface, so that would give us an idea of it using Georgia. But here we see this methodology is extended to a different kind of source, which is the memory of conflict. Okay? Based on those sort of stories which circulating in cultural memory, in social memory. Okay, the archaeologists undertook this program. Okay, and this ghastly episode in local history. So this is again an thing of an instance of local history. Okay, local history again, students of history would know that's a very it's a particular genre of history. কিন্তু এখন ভীষণভাবে local history স্টাডিটা ভীষণভাবে হচ্ছে এবং সেখানে কিন্তু শুধু আর্কাইভাল রেকর্ডস নয়, এটা ছেড়ে দিয়ে আমি বলছি কিন্তু শুধু আর্কাইভাল রেকর্ডস নয়, যেখানে কালচারাল মেমোরি becomes very important, social memory becomes very important. So I am saying that these are all now gray areas where the domain is very much mixed. So the items discovered near the deceased helped identify some of the murder victims. Okay? So this is one of the numerous examples of the repression suffered by German civilians on the territories taken over by the Red Army and Polish Army in 1945. The fate of German war prisoners was particularly harsh. Again, I will detail that. Should go later. Now the last part that I'll be talking about is discovering these terrascapes, okay, which are marked by such remains of communist repressions. Okay. In the urban area, you had places where victims of Stalinism were detained and tortured. Anyone who sort of tried to raise his voice. Then there were these forgotten prisons which had inscriptions on the wall. Okay, the most telling example is in vertical these inscriptions carved on the walls, where the prisoners they left their whatever they had to say on the walls. Okay. Sometimes buildings, residential buildings were turned into prisons. Another research that was initiated in Poland to see that this is less than a decade old, focused on cultural landscapes which were marked by the political circumstances of the communist era, which is mass migration, mass forced migration. This occurred between 1945 to 1946 mostly, where more than 1 million Polish civilians were forced to leave the territories of eastern Poland where they had lived before the war and which were annexed by Soviet Russia. They were sent to former German territories where they resettled villages and towns that were deserted by the Germans. People from central Poland also settled in northwestern part of the country together with Ukrainians deported in 1947 from southeastern Poland as a consequence of the elimination of Ukrainian insurgent army. Again, you get a germ of the conflict that we have seen. So this migration caused a huge difference to population of the original German territories now annexed to Poland, which resulted in the complete decay or even desertion of many settlements. Some of these have been archaeologically studied. So the archaeological research of one particular region, village, revealed the process of total decay and its transformation into archaeological record. So Eta was another, this is again a very sound example of dark heritage or archaeological heritage. After the war, most of the buildings, the bombed buildings, they were ripped apart. They were stripped down to gain building material. Okay. The houses occupied by the border guards were refurbished and equipped with new infrastructure such as a giant radio which was erected next to the farm where horses were bred for the army. এগুলো সবই কিন্তু archaeological excavations থেকে remains গুলো বের হচ্ছে। Attempts were made at alleviating the scarcity of provisions, okay, by breeding some animals. Then submachine gun cases were found along the river. Mm, Then further survey of this village also revealed the succession of natural environment within the village's boundaries. Okay, so the landscape of the village, of the deserted village, the archaeologists will গিয়ে যখন 60-70 বছর পরে যখন খুঁজছে, so এই remains গুলো তারা পাচ্ছে, and a deserted village which was occupied, how that turned into something like near natural. মানে, occupation became, kind of transformed into almost near natural surroundings. So the processes aimed at returning ecological balance, which started with the departure of the people, which meant a return to the original ecosystem of the forest. Okay, ছবি আছে সেখান থেকে পরিষ্কার হয়। So archaeological projects also involve the study of rare but successful acts of resistance to the communist rule, and that is one of the stories is uncovering a partisan arms depot in the Greater Poland province. Okay, again, I mean, detail বলছি না, just এগুলো বলছি যে ওই this these guns, they were obviously used by the partisans to rise against insurgents, basically a wave of insurgency. So this young boy who was just maybe not even in his teens, his father or grandfather was involved in this, and he had seen where these arms were then. Okay, তারপরে তাদের হয়তো এক্সিকিউট করে দেওয়া হয়েছে বা তারা স্ক্যাটার হয়ে গেছে। So this person was called Julian Poland, and in 2013 he was over 80. He remembered that case. তাকে নিয়ে archaeologists গিয়েছিল, and that led to discovery of electric rifles and the box with ammunition. Okay? So these are again examples of rare instances of insurgency which may have been successful, but successful in the sense that a firearms red army, so they would hide those firearms. They never came back to them. Probably, ultimately they were extinguished. But fact that these specimens remain showed that there were some very, very rare but probably somewhat successful attempts of insurgency, which actually did not bear any fruit. Okay? So I end here this particular chapter on dark vintage. Before I take out two photo, and let me see how far I'm able to finish it, which is a completely different thing. So just to if there are বেশি যে বোঝার কোনো ব্যাপার আছে বলে তা নয়, বাট কয়েকটা জিনিস একটু আইসোলেট করে, যখন লিখবে কয়েকটা জিনিস একটু আইসোলেট করে লিখতে হবে। তার ভিতরে যেটা মেইন হচ্ছে যে certain points which is তারপরে what you mean by religious conflict, okay, and what can be what is a very important instance, and how do you illustrate this? What is the need of dark heritage, the uses of dark heritage, and how archaeology is used to study dark heritage, and one very important instance is example illustration of dark heritage is the dark heritage of totalitarian culture. And সেখানে মানে অনেকগুলো ছিল, অনেকগুলো চ্যাপ্টার্স ছিল, but particularly I was keen to highlight this Stalinism, কারণ আমাদের সবসময় সময় this is just my life that the Gulag was no worse than Nazi concentration. So সেখানে মানে ওই আর্কিওলজিক্যাল মেথোডোলজি কিভাবে what were the tools কিভাবে সাইজ ক্যারেক্টারাইজেশন হচ্ছে কিভাবে layout the study হচ্ছে excavation করা হচ্ছে কি প্রতিতে একটা সাইট চুজ করা হচ্ছে for excavation. এই জিনিসগুলো these are the main points which you have to explain with the help of these examples. Statement point আমি বললাম বাকি একটা lost over for the details. But we will go into the details. This I will share with you. So we can read the question number one, otherwise I'll go into the next.
One question is that you talked about the the aspect of when we the concept of plastic like many people think of plastic word like have reincarnated it was that when we were doing them it was as if we would identify this Polish tournaments and all where we were it's and even archaeology because this really discovery standard that patients. So how relevant is that part?
See that জাতিস্বরের ব্যাপারটা is please একটু আসতে জাতিস্বরের ব্যাপারটা is very much part of that সেটা ওখানে সাইন্টিফিক বেসিস থাকে আইডেন্টিফিকেশন দ্যাট ইজ সেইটা ঠিক একটু করে
সেক্ষেত্রে আমরা কি আর্কিওলজি বা
না ওইটা ইন্টারভিউ এমনি হচ্ছে সাইকোলজি ব্যাপারটা আর্কিওলজি একটু স্ট্রেচ করে দেওয়া হচ্ছে কারণ দ্যাট ক্যান বি আ কোইন্সিডেন্স না যে ভাবছে যে হ্যাঁ ওখানে কোইন্সিডেন্স অল ইউ নো হোয়াট দ্যাট সাইকোলজি ইজ তার দিক থেকে একটা জায়গায় এক্সপ্লেন ওরা আগের ওটা ওরকম হবে যে সেই একজন সান্ত সে স্বপ্ন দেখেছিল যে ওইখানে সোনা পাওয়া যাচ্ছে সব আর্কিওলজিস্টরা ছুটি ওখানে সোনা amount to that. So that is a different way. So if you don't have any other question, I will go on to the next.
Which is if the enemies of communist regime were mostly Germans, then why did the Polish have to suffer so much?
What's the enemies?
If the enemies of the communist regime were mostly Germans, then why did the Polish citizens have special?
Polishদের তো অকুপাই করা হচ্ছে পলিশদের ভেতরে জুস আছে পড়ানো হয় তো হ্যাঁ এটা তোমাদের কোন পেপারে এতে পড়ো তো দিস পার্ট সো হোয়াট ইজ দ্যাট কোর্স
Stalin's regime এখন আমরা পড়িনি তো
That we have a different paper for that.
Specialized paper
That is the
actually.
fascism.
Fascism is later.
fascism এবং
Nazism.
পেপার আছে এই পড়া
Cases.
কিছু পড়া কারণ এটা আমেরিকা থেকে পড়াতে So actually, I mean, one would know যে এই যে Polish যারা তাদের একটা sizable number of Jews ছিল civilians তাদেরকে ফোর্স করা হয়েছিল না তাদের ফোর্স করা হয়েছিল to be part of the because part of the war যে পোল্যান্ডের অনেকটা অংশ ভাগ করে দেওয়া হয়েছিল so apart from the Germans Polish they were nationalists so they were not তাদেরকে ফোর্স করা হচ্ছে to pick up the Polish বেশিরভাগই এরা ছিল Roman Catholics তাদের ফোর্স করা হচ্ছিল to be to come under to come under the totalitarian government okay so actually Stalinismটা তো এই করা হয়েছিল impose করা হয়েছিল and you know about the term to ভুলে যাচ্ছি যে fragmentation of Europe Bolshevism right so that is very much part of the Stalinist okay so তাই জন্য ওটা পোল্যান্ড সবচেয়ে বেশি ফেস করেছে পোল্যান্ড তারপরে ধরো obviously সেইখান থেকে অনেকেই civilians এর মধ্যে অনেক armies বা civilians এর মধ্যে rising against the Red Army so তাই জন্য একটা জায়গাকে ফোর্সফুলি যখন নিয়ে করছে পোল্যান্ড this was all part of the Austro-Hungarian Habsburg monarchy এগুলো তো সব আলাদা আলাদা ছোট ছোট regions আমি যেটা করবো আজকে এগুলো slides এগুলো আমি talk about archaeological sites and medieval landscape, medieval architecture. ছবি দিয়ে করলে ভালো হতো, এখানে তো সেই জায়গা নেই। I see that generally the whole class never comes. I think is the maximum. কারণ আজও আমি চট করে ঘুমিয়ে নিচ্ছি so that একটা class we can have it in archaeology. Archaeology আমরা because we have a smart classroom. So ওখানে 30 জন অব্দি এখন রয়েছে বিকজ আমাদের ক্লাসটা 43 জনের, তাই জন্য আমাকে এই ক্লাসরুমটা নিতে হবে। আজকে ক্লাসে কজন আছে? 30 জন তো হবে না। ম্যাক্সিমাম এই 27 জন মতো আছে। তো ম্যাক্সিমাম তোমাদের হয়তো ওই 30 জন মতো থাকবে, তার বেশি থাকবে। সো নেক্সট তোমাদের
Next
অ্যাসেসমেন্ট। হ্যাঁ, তারপরের উইকটা what we do is এই আমি হয়তো আজকে পুরোটা শেষ করতে পারবো না, ছবিগুলো আমি তোমাদের সেদিন দেখি। So আজকে you just and I will share this article so we can see it. Now this talks about we come back from the heritage of conflict. We come back. We will be talking about conflict here. The right on Gujarat after the Babri Masjid and Godra, and সেখানে how landscape design in heritage was planned, okay, and planned, and it was and it has to be situated in the political context, political social context. So here we talk about people thinking, and this is the studies based on two important sites, twin sites. Champaner, Pavagar. Champaner, Pavagar. Champaner, Pavagar, which in the state of Gujarat. It's a World Heritage Site, medieval site, and Gujarat we know the kind of riots happened, which happened in 2002. So here the main aim of this chapter is to show or establish or envision rather linkages between cultural landscape conservation and conciliation in a post-conflict, in a riot-torn landscape, in a riot-torn situation.
Can you repeat that?
What?
The last thing you said.
Establish cultural
You know, they will just catch me absolute unawares if you ask. কারণ আমি তো নিজের মনে কনস্ট্রাক্ট করে বলি, কাজে কি লাস্ট সেন্টেন্স বলেছিলাম এক্সাক্ট ওয়ার্ডস হয়তো আমি পারবো না বলতে। মেইনলি এই চ্যাপ্টারটা ইজ envisioning linkages between cultural landscape conservation and conciliation. Okay? Conciliation in a post-riot-torn Gujarat. আর এইখানে যেভাবে হেরিটেজের হেরিটেজ এখানে যেভাবে ব্যবহার করা হয়েছে, এটা কিন্তু this is an idea of heritage that we have already demolished. Okay, but আমি পড়াচ্ছি because this is an important case study. Therefore, I am not going into the heritage as a contingent process. And এখানে heritage মানে heritage not static, tangible structure. Okay, not heritage as a process that we have been talking about so far. কারণ যেটা বলেছিলাম সেটা is our understanding and understanding of critical heritage studies যেভাবে আমরা দেখছি, কিন্তু এই যে heritage as tangible remains and intangible, that is folklore etc. The tangible remains will tackle heritage করা, the inert staticness of heritage pinpoint করা, সেটা কিন্তু parallelly অনেক studies এই major studies history, early Indian history, ancient history. He did not study, did not nature of heritage, he into identity, but not the more critical thing. So, this this chapter it employs a logic of what is called design inquiry, which aims to generate landscape solutions to social and environmental problems. Um, and the author is very much aware of the critique of such a design. And one of the main stumbling blocks, he says, when one is trying to implement such a design is the various squabbles between conservation designers. Okay, and when they are working with many stakeholder groups, many stakeholders like active stakeholder, social political problems, social environmental problems addressed for it. তো সেইখানে অনেক stakeholder groups যখন চলে আসে, they have their different approaches, they have their different notions of their heritage, which creates a problem. We will see that. Okay? So this was more a kind of, it was a collaborative project, and it was more a kind of exercise to assess and evaluate some of these problems. So main thing is what they tried to assess or evaluate that how we can address issues of violent cultural and social conflict through landscape design. That was the basic question. Now, the project was led by the Baroda Heritage Trust in collaboration with People for Heritage Concern and the Department of Landscape Architecture at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. For details, now we have most important that private project. Okay, they Baroda Heritage Trust are University of Illinois Landscape Architecture Department and People for Heritage Concern, which is almost like they and যেটা দেখা যায় that hundreds of religious structures, mainly mosques and shrines, they were destroyed in 2002 post-war. But cultural sites at Champaran and Pavadar experienced less destruction. Okay? So it is important to ask why this is so and how conservation or such a design inquiry can address heritage conflicts, including those involving human rights abuses. I'm going to put description of the landscape picture, very impressive landscape and description without pictures will not help. But basically, a Pavadar, it's a hill, it's a volcanic core that is a hill. So, dormant volcanic core. It's the outlier range of the hill is the outlier. It's an outlier of the southern Aravalli range. Okay? And this has long served as a religious pilgrimage center and destination of the Hindus. At a pilgrim's path, Achedita Devi trace, which goes up to the hill through the medieval Rajput and Sultanate fortifications and outposts.
Lost connection to the internet. Please try again a bit later.
Were you trying to call someone?
No, maybe my location was on, so sorry.
So why didn't you switch it? Put it on silent mode.
Sorry.
So this particular pilgrim's path, it ascends the hill through medieval Rajput and Sultanate fortifications vast Jain and Hindu temples, rest areas, culminating at the borders of Kalika Mata at the summit, on the summit. So see how interesting the pilgrim path that actually through multifarious religious, multi-religious, multi-ethnic sort of outlets, okay, sort of outposts, okay. সেখানে রাজপুত সালতানাত Shawmy or Gujarat and Rajasthan, medieval period is basically architectural Rajput and Sultanate period. Okay, so why actually একটা কালকামাতা মন্দির হিন্দুদের মন্দির তারা যাচ্ছে ইসলামিক আর্কিটেকচার জৈন etc translate but truly the question is why. Okay, that one that definitely was the first thing that struck the people. আরেকটা খুব ইম্পর্টেন্ট জিনিস হচ্ছে যে there was a chain of reservoirs or talaos যেমন এসব হচ্ছে water scarcity, severe drought, okay, and these talaos were perched on each plateau. These the names of these reservoirs reflect the water's descent from pure milk to yogurt and oil. অর্থাৎ ওয়াটারকে মানে এই সিমিলিসগুলো এস্টাবলিশ করা হচ্ছে, okay, pure milk, yogurt, oil. So you can understand the preciousness of water in this area. The water system of Champanen, in fact, Champanen, Pavagar, and medieval architecture were Guru watching part of it. And these are the water systems are important. The network is important to understand the residential settlements. আমরা architecture যখন কাজ করি আমরা সবসময় ফার্স্ট এটা দেখার চেষ্টা করি যে water resources কি আছে, কারণ কোনো সেটেলমেন্ট হবে না without water resources. And this kind of discharges these allows discharge into a large irrigation tank and channel. You have to go just to recreate the landscape of Champanen and Pavagar. Champanen was actually established by the Sultanate 15th century Sultanate ruler as a state capital. Okay, Pavagar Champanen was the capital, and he constructed the dramatic Jama Masjid, private mosque. When besieging a local Rajput ruler who was encamped in Pavagar Hill, Rajput are Sultanate ভেতরে সবসময় conflict story, all of you know, so the history particularly. So ওই Rajput ওই local probably minor clan তাকে defeat করে মানে the victory and the Jama Masjid was established in 1484 in the 15th century. ছবিগুলো আছে. It's a very interesting landscape. And this was situated the Champanen, the strategic route between the rival provinces of Gujarat and Malwa. Rival provinces because there was always this tussle, okay, Delhi Sultanate, Gujarat and local Raja, Rajputs, okay. And Champanen grew in size and architectural patronage until it was sacked by the Mughal ruler Humayun in the 16th century. After which, the capital of Gujarat shifted back to Ahmedabad. So post Humayun, the capital shifted back to Ahmedabad. Ahmedabad again has its own story. That can be an excellent case study of heritage. Especially open areas only have touch on the point because you have the national history design. So, Champanen lost its importance after the capital shifted and it's returned to its frontier situation for roughly 4 centuries. It was a frontier site and the regional pilgrimage. Pilgrimage and it expanded during the 20th century. Hundreds of thousands of pilgrims annually come to this, and there was an extensive urban settlement pattern which was uncovered by the archaeological excavation. Tourism has also grown, heritage tourism. Now, the Baroda Heritage Trust, what আমি দেখছি যে তোমার কনসার্ভেশন ক্লাসে থাকছে যদি না থাকেন আবার বলছি don't distract me because by distracting me you're distracting me. ক্লাসে থাকতেই হবে তার তো কোনো কারণ নেই, পার্সেন্টেজ নেবে বেরিয়ে যাবে, কি আছে? যখন ক্লাস চলছে তখন যখন পরস্পরের ভিতরে হাসাহাসি এবং কথাবার্তা বলতে পারবে তাহলে তো চোখ খোলার কোনো ব্যাপার নেই, তাহলে পার্সেন্টেজ নিয়ে তো বেরিয়ে যাবে ক্লাস থেকে। Why waste for these 2 hours? So the Baroda Heritage Trust it sponsored 3 cultural landscape heritage workshops between 2001 and 2005. So as part of the design inquiry, so this was to develop a landscape approach which embraced the issues of pilgrimage, tourism, economic development, forest management, and ecological protection. So, at এই ব্যাপারগুলো তখনই হয় where it's not where such work is not confined to just archaeologists. শুধু archaeologists তো archaeological preservation. Okay, so in fact, architecture people are that way. They have a more expansive scope of their work. So the landscape approach has 5 guiding principles. 1, it extends beyond monuments and sites to the rich topographic sense of place. Now here I will pause for some time to talk about the sense of place. Okay? Now sense of place is something which has been highlighted by cultural anthropologists and cultural geographers. Okay? Sense of place নিয়ে প্রচুর কাজ হয়েছে in cultural geography and cultural anthropology, যেখানে মূল ব্যাপারটা হচ্ছে যে a place, they don't call it a site, it's not an archaeological work. So at a place, say mainly এদের কাজগুলো in the nature scale or the landscape. So at a place which how it becomes what is called, they use this word mnemonic, M-N-E. How it becomes a mnemonic device in the sense that it a lot of memories are embedded in the place. Okay, so the natural topography is not the only thing, right? So it's basically a cultural topography. এখানে নানান ধরনের terms used হয়েছে to explain this. So the basic thing এরা বলে যে it is sense of the place. A sense of the place can be sometimes invisible. Most cases invisible. It is not anchored in visibility. Okay, it is anchored in cultural memory. It is anchored in soundscape. বলে একটা term অনেক সময় use করা হয়. It is anchored in something what has been called taskscape also. So senses of place bole Indian anthropologists, they're very important volume which came out in 1995 by Keith and Basso. কারো যদি ইন্টারেস্ট হয় দেখতে পারো। এটা কিন্তু আমি তোমাদের it's not part of your syllabus, but any of you interested in such questions and in cultural anthropology can look up. The guide to be true is available in the net. Keith and Basso, which is called the anthropology of place. Okay, so and also this sense of place is going beyond the Western idiom of visuality. It's going beyond the Western modality. A particular in Noida, there are these case studies of ethnic groups in non-Western regions, I mean, outside Europe, say in Southeast Asia, mostly in South America. Okay? And we do a study today, anthropologists are able to how one relates to a place. It is not always visually, but sometimes by sound. The soundscape বললাম যে একটা particular ঝর্ণা কেমন সেই ঝর্ণাটা সোনোরিটি আছে সো ওই particular area becomes it's the sonority which becomes embedded in that particular place তাকে ঘিরে অনেক সময় rituals celebrations etc সো তারপরে আরেকটা হচ্ছে যে মানে জাপানের পাওয়াটা নিয়ে সেই কাজ হয়নি সেটা হচ্ছে যে যেটা জগ্রাফার্স পরে কিছু ল্যান্ডস্কেপ আর্কিওলজিস্টরা করেছে যে মনুমেন্টস ইন দ্য ল্যান্ডস্কেপ কেন একটা পার্টিকুলার জায়গায় বিল্ড করা হচ্ছে ফর আ পার্টিকুলার টেম্পল অর আ পার্টিকুলার সে particular structure, say a commemorative burial, okay, a kind of something like a many single stone which is placed on the top of the hill, not for burial, but to commemorate the ones who have departed. The very particular detail cannot be kept. So these archaeologists of landscape, they say that again we have to concentrate not on the European or the Western medium of visuality, but going into they have done undertaken ethnographic studies that how you look at a particular place, say among among the Western groups, ethnic communities, indigenous groups, that how one senses a place, how one place stays in one's consciousness through the myths, legends which surround the place. Okay, so so this is actually not when we talk of topographic sense of place, we are not just talking about the physical topography, but we are talking about the cultural topography. সেই cultural topography ভিতরে এই ব্যাপারগুলো চলে আসে। So it extends beyond monuments and sites to the rich topographic sense of place. It focuses on relationships between environmental and social process. Then it looks at multiple historical layers from the medieval to the modern. It operates on multiple geographical scales from the site to the region, and it uses these lines of inquiries to design alternatives that that help to or that reconnect people and places. So এখানে দেখা গেল যে so they developed these master plans for an archaeological park that focus. So this chapter actually talks entirely about the plan and what they wanted to make of Champaner Park. So archaeological park that focused on Champaner city, cultural sanctuary which was focused on Pavagar Hill, a system of 5 trails, tourist trails which link Champaner to Pavagar. And তারপরে এটা 2004 which became a World Heritage Site because for a variety of reasons within the Hindu Buddhist center, which is the Kangamata, cluster of Jain temples, the preserved medieval urban fabric, not only the Jama Masjid, but also various sandstone carved mosques and tombs, and of course the intangible cultural values. And next, just which all of you know, so I'm not going into that. That is the scenario just after February 2002, after Godra, and how the retaliation happened to the carnage at Godra. Champaner and Pavagar were also affected, but not as violently as the nearby towns. There were newspaper reports that Muslims in Champaner were threatened, driven out of their shops, and shops damaged and looted. Most local Muslim families fled for their safety, and when they tried to return in December 2002, they were again driven off. After around 2003, 2005, 8 Muslim families returned to Champaran Pavagar, but they remained fearful of attacks and avoided public visibility by wearing non-Muslim types of clothing. And many reported economic boycotts. And one report from Champaran even suggested that Muslims would be permitted back if they retracted police charges against 52 men accused of looting. Politicians, as usual, manipulated all these events. But the main thing was that these were still less compared to the other cities, and therefore it has been affected by regional violence, but we do not see the direct physical human rights violations as we see in the other places of Gujarat. Now, so there are various kind of cultural conflict that such as this can definitely put odds to cultural heritage conservation. At the same time, we understand that sometimes heritage conservation actions unwittingly aggravate cultural conflict. So, how to attain a balance where one would preserve yet not aggravate cultural conflict? So, economic quite relationships have been highlighted. And with respect to not just Japan, but of course the greater world, there was the UN Convention for the Protection of Cultural Property in the event of armed conflict, which was in force and since 1956. However, it does not apply to the internal civil strife like the one we saw in Gujarat. So basically ব্যাপারটা হচ্ছে যে বেশিরভাগ সময় দেখা যাচ্ছে যে you have these things but they are not effective to stop conflict. Then places of violence, the relationship to these places of violence is cultural heritage. Before we talk of Champaran Pavagar, we know that like public district, that is a place of violence which has been promoted as cultural heritage. I will not go into the details, it's all out in the public media, that how that was sort of, that is now aimed as a site of cultural heritage, etc. etc. So I will come back to Champaran Pavagar. And here, many of the projected archaeological remnants in Champaran Pavagar were built as military fortifications. Okay? The Friday Mosque of Champaran town was built by the local Sultan while besieging Rajput rivals in hill-slope forts, okay, with the aim of communicating this resolve. So there are heritage places which were built as a mark of victory over a conflict. Okay, that is the historical perspective. And as I said, the Pilgrim's Path, on the other hand, winds its way up Pavagar Hill through a series of Rajput and Sultanate fortifications. And in many of these structures also include sophisticated gateways, fortified passages which were designed to withstand long periods of siege. So, heritage conservation of sites of conflict. Okay? That is the relationship places of violence become sites of cultural preservation. Now, relationship 3 is heritage, where it becomes an object of conflict, destruction, and desecration. We have various such examples from around the world. We know about Bosnia, we know about the Taliban destruction, we just now talked about the Masjid, where heritage is an object of conflict, destruction, and desecration. And here in Japan and Pavagar, as I was saying, that historic mosques were not destroyed, interestingly. Modern contemporary mosques were destroyed, modern village mosques. Not was this, so the question is, was this because they were deemed monuments and economically viable as for tourism or culturally valuable to the wider community? Why were they not destroyed? Okay, in the when large-scale destruction of Islamic monuments were happening. Pilgrim routes can also become parts of conflict when they pass through rival territories and heritage sites. But the pilgrimage routes and religious places related to Japan and Pavagar have no such history. Now, the relationship 4 is basically about heritage conservation, conflict, and economic development. Again, we have a lot of these examples. We also talked about, we went into the details of sustainability development, what it means for economics. Now, in Japan and Pavagar, there are intense developmental pressures to construct dharamshalas for pilgrims, ropeway for mountain. Ropeway up the mountain for tourists, highway construction through the sites, competition across economic sectors also involve diverse socioeconomic and elite constituencies. So these kind of pressures are there, and how does heritage cope with that pressure? But politically, important way because they cross-cut these various elite these various constituencies which cross-cut various socioeconomic classes and elite kind of places, elite communities. The next relationship 5 is among conflict that one sees among heritage stakeholders over material and symbolic control. Japan and Pavagar, one, it has cultural diversity, but again, it shows a kind of institutional fragmentation among national, state, local, and private organizations. National is ASI, state is Gujarat state government, local is these local bodies, and private organizations like, say, citizens community that I just mentioned, which was academic bodies. At the national level, there are ASI protected sites, but there is little ASI presence compared to state archaeology, forest management places, and irrigation districts. The Panchmahal district headquarters in Godhra has jurisdiction over local roads, schools, and public finance. Shekhane ASI jurisdiction in Bangladesh. Champanek town is a separate entity from settlements on the hill. The Ropeway Coalition and Champanek Hotel have concessions to make profit from tourism. And then there are temple trusts and various NGOs on the Pavagar Hill, which try to maximize their interests. Okay? Then there are NGO programs of tree planting and recent. So in various bodies who are here, various interests are here, various stakeholder groups are here. So the challenge is the twin sites heritage program যদি কিছু রাখা হয়, design inquiry রাখা হয়. So how do we bring all these diverse interests together? Harmonious সবসময় হয় না, but how to bring them together, how to find balance, fine-tune them, how to balance them. I will stop here, কারণ rest of it আমি আজকে শেষ করতে পারবো না. So what I do is
ইন্টারনেট জন্য একটু হেল্প
আমার আরেকটা ক্লাস লাগবে আমার আরেকটা ক্লাস লাগবে photographs and
এই সোহেলি
so next class
ইন্টারনেট জিজ্ঞাসা কর না কিছু ইন্টারনেটের জন্য
11টার সময় আমাদের
আইডিয়া
এক্সাম হচ্ছে and আমি আবার আজকে তোমাদের দেখতে জানিয়ে দেবো তোমাদের গ্রুপে বলে দেবো অ্যানাউন্স করে দেবো
11 থেকে
11 থেকে 12
ম্যাম যারা কোনোদিনও ক্লাস করেনি তারা এক্সাম দিতে পারবে তো?
হ্যাঁ
যারা কোনোদিনও ক্লাস করেনি
হ্যাঁ করতে তো পারবে, কারণ আর অন্য কোনো দিন কিন্তু এই পরীক্ষাটা হবে না.
Yes, ma'am, it would be very helpful. Ma'am, it would be very helpful.
আমি লাস্ট উইকে ছিলেন, লাস্ট উইকে আমি ডিসকাস করেছিলাম,
Yes, ma'am.
লাস্ট উইকে ডিসকাস করেছিলাম. ফার্দার কোনো যদি কোয়েরিজ থাকে পরে আমার সাথে দেখা হবে. আজকে আমি আছি, সো আই উইল ডেট সো পরে দেখা হবে.
কিছু সাগরিকে
So যারা আসলে I mean you don't have to come and see me, but যারা আসলে তারা যারা ছিলে সেদিন ক্লাসে আমি যেগুলো I had read out certain questions সেগুলো জেনে নিই.
Thank you, ma'am.
কিছু সাগরিকে আর
মোবাইলটা আমি নিয়ে নিলাম
আসেনি আমি আসি